Story outline: Hearts Across the Void Part 1. First Contact characters: Zara Thorne, human xenolinguist. Nith Etherian empath setting: research station orbiting dying star plot. Initial meeting between species, instant connection despite cultural barriers. Part 2. Forbidden bonds characters: Zara and Nith, Captain Helena Cross. Elder Voss Etherian council setting: research station. Etherian ship rival plot: growing romance faces opposition from both species authorities. Part 3. The choice characters: Zara and Nith, Keeper Thane Ancient Etherian. Various council members setting: Etherian homeworld plot. Couple must choose between separation or dangerous bonding ritual. Part 4. Transcendence characters: Zara and Nith, witnesses from both species setting: sacred bonding chamber during cosmic event plot. The transformation ritual and its unexpected consequence. Part 5. New Dawn characters: Zara and Nith transformed. Ambassador Quinn, Matriarch Senna setting: joint human Etherian colony plot. Their union becomes foundation for interspecies cooperation and understanding. Part 1. First Contact research vessel Harmony drifted silently through the cosmos, its hull gleaming silver against the backdrop of dying stars. Within its observation deck, Zara Thorne pressed her palm against the reinforced viewport, watching the spectacular death throes of the binary system they'd been studying for months. As the station's lead xenolinguist, she had devoted her life to understanding alien cultures, but never had she expected to witness something so beautiful and terrifying as the cosmic ballet unfolding before her. The twin stars spiraled closer, together in their final dance, their gravitational embrace creating waves of energy that painted space in brilliant hues of gold and crimson. It was during this celestial performance that the anomaly appeared: a ship unlike anything in human records, its organic curves and bioluminescent panels suggesting a technology born from living art rather than cold engineering. Zara, we're receiving a transmission, called Lieutenant Marcus Webb from the communications console. His voice carried the tension that had gripped the entire crew since the alien vessel's arrival 3 hours ago. It's in multiple languages. They're trying to communicate. Zara's heart raced as she moved to the communications ray. This was the moment she had trained for her entire career: first contact with a truly alien intelligence. The transmission played through the speakers, a melodic combination of sounds that seemed less like speech and more like music. Beneath the alien tones, she could detect fragments of various human languages, as if the beings had been studying their communications. They're called the Etherians, she announced after 20 minutes of analysis, her excitement barely contained. And they're requesting permission to send an ambassador aboard. Captain Helena Cross, a stern woman with graying hair and sharp blue eyes, studied the readings with practiced caution. What are your recommendations, Thorne? This could be the most significant moment in human history, Zara replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. We have to try. An hour later, the docking bay doors hissed open to reveal a figure that took Zara's breath away. The Etherian stood barely 5.5 feet tall, with skin that seemed to shift between pale silver and soft blue depending on the light. Delicate features were framed by hair that moved like liquid starlight, and eyes the color of deep ocean held an intelligence both ancient and curious. I am Nith, the being said, its voice carrying harmonics that resonated in Zara's chest. I come seeking understanding. Zara stepped forward, her training taking over despite her awe. I'm Zara Thorne, xenolinguist. Welcome aboard the Harmony. She gestured toward the research corridors. Perhaps we could speak somewhere more private? As they walked through the station's corridors, Zara noticed how other crew members stopped to stare at their ethereal visitor. Nith seemed to shrink slightly under their scrutiny, a soft luminescence flickering beneath its skin like a nervous heartbeat. The staring bothers you, Zara observed gently as they entered her private study. Your people see with such intensity, Nith replied, settling gracefully into the chair she offered. We perceive through emotion and energy as much as sight. Your curiosity feels overwhelming. I apologize for their rudeness, Zara said, dimming the harsh overhead lights to something softer. Would this be more comfortable? Nith's skin brightened with surprise, patterns of pale gold flickering across its features. You would adjust your environment for my comfort. Of course, understanding begins with respect. For the first time since boarding, Nith seemed to truly relax. You are not what I expected of humans. They spent hours in conversation, Zara learning that the Etherians were an ancient species capable of empathic connection, while Nith discovered humanity's passionate drive to explore and understand the universe. What struck Zara most was how the aliens' emotional responses manifested as shifting patterns of light across its skin, a living display of inner feelings. Your people touch minds, Zara asked, fascinated by Nith's description of Etherian society. In a way, Nith replied, its skin flickering with deep purple thoughtfulness. We share consciousness with family from birth, but as we mature, we learn to shield our thoughts. Physical contact can lower those barriers completely. That must make relationships incredibly intimate. Among my people, touch is reserved for life bonding. We choose only one to share our complete self with. Nith's voice carried a weight of longing that made Zara's chest tighten. It is both beautiful and lonely. As days passed, their research sessions became something more than academic exchange. Zara found herself looking forward to their conversations, fascinated not just by Etherian culture, but by Nith's unique perspective on existence. The alien beings seemed equally drawn to her, lingering after their formal meetings and finding excuses to extend their time together. The breakthrough came during their 5th day of collaboration. While discussing Etherian poetry, Zara reached for the same data tablet as Nith. Their hands came within inches of each other before both froze. Suddenly aware of the significance of the near contact, Nith's skin began to glow, not the subtle flickers Zara had grown accustomed to, but a warm, pulsing radiance that filled the study with soft light. The luminescence seemed to respond to Zara's proximity, growing brighter as she remained close. Nith, Zara whispered, "What's happening? I cannot control it when you are near." Nith admitted, its voice barely audible. "This has never happened before. Is it painful?" "No." The single word carried so much emotion, confusion, wonder. Something deeper. "It feels like awakening." Zara's heart raced as she realized the implications. "Are you saying that you're responding to me, a human?" "I do not know what I am saying," Nith interrupted, its glow dimming as it pulled back. "My people have strict customs. We do not bond outside our species." "We don't have to define anything," Zara said gently. "Whatever this is between us, we can explore it carefully." But even as she spoke the words, Zara knew they were both past the point of casual friendship. The way Nith looked at her, the way its entire being seemed to light up in her presence, it spoke of something far deeper than scientific collaboration. That night, Zara lay in her quarters staring at the stars beyond her porthole, thinking about the way Nith's skin had glowed in response to her nearness. According to her research, such displays were involuntary, tied to deep emotional states. If Nith was glowing around her, it meant, meanwhile, in the guest quarters, Nith stood before the observation window, watching the twin stars spiral closer to their inevitable collision. Every instinct evolved over millennia told it to maintain distance, to protect its mental barriers. But every moment spent with Zara made those barriers feel less like protection, and more like a prison. For the first time in its long life, Nith found itself questioning the ancient ways of its people. What would it mean to touch a being from another world? What would it feel like to share consciousness with someone whose thoughts moved in patterns so different from its own? As the binary stars pulsed with increasing violence, casting their cosmic light across both human and Etherian faces, two beings from different worlds found themselves drawn together by forces neither fully understood. Love, it seemed, recognized no boundaries of species or custom. The dance of dying stars continued overhead, a cosmic reminder that some unions, however unlikely, were written in the very fabric of the universe itself. Part 2. Forbidden Bunch. Morning after their near touch brought with it a tension that seemed to permeate every corner of the research station. Zara found herself unable to concentrate on her linguistic analysis, her thoughts constantly drifting to the memory of Nith's radiant glow and the profound connection she'd felt in that moment of almost contact. The Etherians' admission that such responses had never happened before echoed in her mind, carrying implications that both thrilled and terrified her. When Nith arrived for their scheduled research session, the atmosphere between them crackled. With unspoken awareness, the Etherean moved with careful deliberation, maintaining a respectful distance that nonetheless felt charged with possibility. Its skin displayed subtle patterns of nervous energy, quick flickers of silver mixed with deeper currents of blue that Zara had learned to associate with complex emotions. "I have been thinking about yesterday," Nith said without preamble, settling into its usual chair, but keeping its luminous eyes fixed on the data tablets. Rather than meeting Zara's gaze, "about what occurred between us." Zara's pulse quickened. "And what conclusions have you reached?" "That I am changing." Nith's voice carried a mixture of wonder and uncertainty. "Your presence affects me in ways I do not fully understand. Among my people, such responses indicated deep compatibility of consciousness, what you might call a resonance of souls. But you've never experienced this with your own species?" Nith's skin flickered with what Zara recognized as embarrassment. "I have lived for what you would measure as 43 of your years. In that time, I have met many potential bondmates, chosen by the Council, yet none produced even the slightest empathic response. I began to believe I was defective." The raw vulnerability in Nith's admission made Zara's heart ache. Without thinking, she leaned forward, her hand moving instinctively toward the Etherean before she caught herself and pulled back. Even that small gesture caused Nith's skin to pulse with warm gold light. "You're not defective," Zara said firmly. "Maybe you just needed to find the right connection." Even if it came from an unexpected source, their eyes met across the small table, and for a moment the rest of the universe seemed to fade away. The dying binary stars beyond the viewport, the hum of the station's life support, even the weight of their respective cultures' expectations. All of it dissolved in the intensity of that shared gaze. "Zara," Nith whispered, its voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in her very bones. "What are we doing?" Before she could answer, the study door chimed and slid open to reveal Captain Cross. The older woman's expression was carefully neutral, but Zara caught the slight tightening around her eyes that indicated concern. "Thorn, we need to talk." Cross's gaze shifted to Nith, who had immediately dimmed its natural luminescence. "Privately, in the captain's ready room." Cross wasted no time getting to the point. "The crew is talking, Zara, about you and our Etherean guest. Some are saying they've observed unusual interactions." Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Captain, if this is about maintaining professional, this is about the fact that we're dealing with first contact protocols." Cross interrupted. "Whatever's happening between you two, it's affecting the entire crew. They're either fascinated or concerned, and neither reaction is helpful for maintaining diplomatic neutrality." "Nothing inappropriate has occurred," Zara protested, though, even as she said it, she wondered if her growing feelings for Nith constituted a violation of her professional duties. Cross studied her with sharp eyes. "I've been a starship captain for 20 years, Thorn. I know attraction when I see it, even when it crosses species lines. The question is, what are you planning to do about it?" Before Zara could formulate an answer, the station's communication system crackled to life. Captain Cross to the bridge immediately. "We have multiple contacts approaching Etherean vessels." The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as 3 sleek Etherean ships materialized from what appeared to be folds in space itself. Their organic hulls pulsed with the same bioluminescent patterns that decorated Nith's skin, but these displays carried an unmistakably aggressive rhythm. "They're hailing us," reported Lieutenant Webb, his fingers flying over the communications console. "The transmission is formal, very formal." Nith appeared on the bridge moments after Zara and the captain, its skin now displaying rapid flickers of what could only be described as panic. "They have come for me," it said, the words barely audible. "The Council has discovered my mission." "What mission?" Cross demanded. "You said you were here as a cultural ambassador." "I am," Nith replied, but its luminescence flickered with what Zara had learned to recognize as partial truth. "But I was also studying human emotional responses. The Council believes that understanding your species' capacity for individual bonds might help us address our own reproductive decline." The lead Etherian vessel transmitted a formal request for transport, and within an hour, the station's main docking bay hosted a delegation that made Nith seem warm and approachable by comparison. 3 tall, austere figures glided aboard, their robes flowing like liquid darkness and their skin displaying patterns of cold, controlled light. The delegation's leader introduced itself as Elder Voss, its voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. When it spoke, the harmonics that had made Nith's voice so appealing instead created an almost uncomfortable resonance that set everyone's teeth on edge. Nith of the third emergence, Elder Voss intoned, ignoring the humans entirely. You have exceeded your mission parameters. Report. Nith straightened, drawing on reserves of dignity that made it seem suddenly more alien and distant than ever before. I have learned much about human emotional bonding, Elder. Their capacity for individual connection is remarkable. Yes, another elder replied, its skin flickering with what might have been amusement. We have observed your research methods. The empathic resonance you have developed with the human female is most illuminating. Zara felt her blood run cold. They had been monitoring Nith's emotional responses from across space. The resonance is unintentional, Nith protested, but its skin betrayed the lie with flickers of golden light. Irrelevant, Elder Voss declared. You will return with us immediately for emotional realignment. The contamination must be purged before it affects your bonding potential with approved candidates. What kind of purification? Zara demanded, stepping forward despite Captain Cross's restraining hand on her arm. Elder Voss finally acknowledged her presence, its cold gaze making her skin crawl. The human speaks out of turn. Nith's emotional responses have been corrupted by exposure to your species' crude bonding mechanisms. We will restore proper Etherian purity. Through some instinct she didn't fully understand, Zara could sense Nith's horror at the elder's words. The process they described wouldn't just end whatever was growing between them. It would fundamentally alter Nith's capacity for emotional connection. There's another way, Nith said suddenly, its voice gaining strength. Through their growing connection, Zara could feel its desperate determination. The Vethai. If I complete the soul binding with one who truly resonates with my consciousness, the bond cannot be severed by external intervention. The temperature in the docking bay seemed to drop several degrees as the 3 elders reacted to Nith's words. Their skin patterns shifted to harsh reds and stark white colors that clearly indicated extreme displeasure. You would suggest the forbidden joining with an alien. Elder Voss's voice carried deadly quiet. The Vethai with a non-Etherian would make you no longer one of our people. Then perhaps, Nith replied, taking Zara's hand and letting its love blaze through their growing connection. It is time for me to become something new. The gesture sent ripples of luminescence up both their arms, a visible display of their compatibility that made several of the elders step back in obvious shock. Impossible. The third elder breathed. The resonance is too strong. How can a human consciousness mesh so completely with Etherian neural patterns? Elder Voss's skin now pulsed with colors Zara had never seen before. Deep purple shot through, with veins of angry crimson. You have until the twin stars complete their collapse to make your choice. Nith of the third emergence, return with us willingly for purification, or we will take you by force and perform the cleansing whether you consent or not. As the Etherian delegation withdrew to their ships to wait, Zara and Nith found themselves facing an impossible decision. Submit to separation and the destruction of everything growing between them, or risk a bonding ritual that might transform them both beyond recognition. Are you certain about this, Vethai? Zara asked as they stood together in the observation lounge watching the Etherian ships maintain their ominous vigil. I have never been more certain of anything, Nith replied, its skin pulsing with determined golden light. But you must understand, if we attempt the soul binding and it fails, we will both be destroyed. Our consciousnesses will tear each other apart. Zara looked out at the dying binary stars, now so close that their outer layers were beginning to merge in spectacular cascades of plasma and energy. In 12 hours, the stellar collision would reach its peak, creating the cosmic conditions necessary for the Vethai ritual. And if it succeeds, then we become something the galaxy has never seen before, Nith whispered, its hand thin. The hours following Elder Voss's ultimatum passed like a waking dream. Zara found herself unable to eat, unable to sleep, her mind racing through the implications of what she and Nith were contemplating. The Vethaya, ritual so sacred and dangerous that even the Etherean texts spoke of it in whispers, warning of consciousness torn asunder and souls lost between worlds. Captain Cross had confined the situation to senior staff only, but word traveled fast on a research station. Whispered conversations stopped when Zara entered common areas, and she could feel the weight of curious and concerned gazes following her every movement. Some crew members looked at her with fascination, others with barely concealed disapproval. A few, like the station's anthropologist Marcus Webb, watched with the keen interest of scientists witnessing history in the making. Nith had retreated to the guest quarters, its skin cycling through rapid patterns of light that spoke of intense internal struggle. When Zara visited, she found the Ethereans surrounded by crystalline data tablets displaying ancient texts, their surfaces casting rainbow refractions across the walls. "I've been studying the ritual passages," Nith said without looking up from the glowing script. "The requirements are complex." Zara settled beside it, careful to maintain the respectful distance they'd established, though every fiber of her being longed to offer comfort through touch. "Tell me." The Vethai can only be performed during a stellar cataclysm when spacetime itself becomes fluid enough to allow consciousness to transcend physical limitations. The joining must be complete, holding nothing back, no shields or barriers between minds. Nith's skin flickered with deep purple uncertainty. "But Zara, the texts warn that incompatible consciousnesses can destroy each other. What we're attempting has never been tried between species." Before Zara could respond, the quarter's communication panel chimed. Captain Cross's voice filled the space. "All senior staff to Conference Room Alpha. We have an unexpected visitor." The conference room was already crowded when they arrived. The senior staff sat around the central table while at its head stood a figure that made even Elder Voss seem young by comparison, ancient beyond measure. The newcomer's skin held an opalescent quality that spoke of countless centuries, and its eyes carried depths that seemed to hold the memory of stars. "I am Keeper Thane," the ancient being said, its voice carrying harmonics that resonated in the very bones of everyone present. "Guardian of the oldest knowledge, witness to the first emergence of our people from the void between worlds." Elder Voss, who had been summoned from the waiting ships, stood rigidly beside the conference table. "Keeper, your presence honors us, but this matter is one of law and order. The aberrant joining cannot be permitted." Keeper Thane's gaze shifted to Nith, then to Zara, and something like ancient wisdom sparkled in those timeless eyes. "Show me this bond you speak of, children." NYTH hesitated, glancing at the assembled crowd of humans and Ethereans. Zara stepped closer, offering her hand palm up in invitation. The moment their fingers touched, both beings began to glow, not the wild, uncontrolled radiance of their first connection, but something deeper, more harmonious. The light that flowed between them pulsed in perfect synchronization, and even the humans in the room could sense the profound compatibility of their joined consciousness. Keeper Thane circled them slowly, studying the patterns of light with eyes that had seen the birth and death of civilizations. "Remarkable," it breathed. "This is not contamination or aberration. This is recognition." "Keeper," Elder Voss's voice carried confusion and barely suppressed anger. "The ancient texts speak of the first dreaming," Thane explained, never taking its eyes off the joined pair. "When consciousness first emerged from the cosmic void, it was not bound by the limitations of form or species. What these two have found is an echo of that primal unity, proof that awareness itself transcends the boundaries we have constructed." Zara felt Nith's amazement flow through their connection, mixed with her own wonder at the ancient being's words. Through their link, she experienced flashes of Etherean race memory, images of the earliest days when consciousness was fluid, unbounded by physical form. "The Vethai was created for such joinings," Keeper Thane continued, "not merely for our people alone, but for any consciousnesses that achieve true resonance. It is we who have forgotten the ritual's original purpose." "This is heresy, Elder," Voss protested. "Our laws clearly state—" "Your laws," Thane interrupted with gentle authority, are interpretations written by those who had forgotten the deeper truths. I am old enough to remember when the Veth-Hai was first performed. Before fear made us turn inward and reject the wider universe, the Keeper approached the viewing portal, where the binary stars now blazed with increasing intensity, their death spiral creating gravitational waves that made the station shudder. The stellar collapse reaches its peak in 6 hours. If you are to attempt the joining, it must be soon. Captain Cross leaned forward in her chair. What exactly are the risks we're talking about here? Keeper Thane's expression grew solemn. The Veth-Hai transforms both participants at the deepest level of consciousness. If successful, they become something new, neither fully human nor Etherian, but a bridge between worlds. However, if their minds prove incompatible during the merging process, we die. Zara finished quietly. More than die, Thane corrected. Your consciousnesses would tear each other apart, leaving your bodies alive but empty. It is a fate considered worse than death among my people. The conference room fell silent except for the distant hum of the station systems and the occasional shudder as gravitational waves from the dying stars swept over them. Zara felt the weight of every gaze in the room, the mixture of fascination, concern, and barely concealed horror from her fellow humans. Elder Voss and the other council members radiated cold disapproval, while Nith's emotions flowed through their connection: fear, determination, and above all, an unwavering love that strengthened her own resolve. There's something else you should know, Keeper Thane said after several long moments. The joining changes not just the participants, but creates what our oldest texts call a resonance cascade. Their united consciousness becomes a beacon, potentially awakening similar connections in others of both species. You're saying this could affect more than just them? Captain Cross asked. I'm saying it could be the beginning of a new form of evolution, one that bridges the gap between species through consciousness rather than genetics. Elder Voss's skin flashed with alarmed reds and whites. All the more reason to prevent this abomination. Our genetic purity, our cultural integrity, will adapt or stagnate, Thane replied calmly. Evolution cares nothing for our comfort, Elder. It moves toward greater complexity, greater unity. Perhaps it is time our people remembered that we are part of a larger cosmos, not separate from it. Marcus Webb, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. From an anthropological perspective, we're witnessing something unprecedented. The first documented case of interspecies consciousness bonding. The scientific implications alone. This isn't about science, Zara interrupted, her voice steady. Despite the turmoil in her heart, this is about love. About two beings who found something in each other that transcends every boundary we thought existed. She turned to face the assembled group, her hands still linked with Nith's, their combined radiance painting the conference room in soft, warm light. I know the risks. We both do. But I also know that what we've found together is worth fighting for, worth risking everything to preserve. And if you're wrong, Elder Voss demanded, if your consciousness proves incompatible and you destroy each other, Nith spoke for the first time since the discussion began, its voice carrying new strength. Then we will have failed gloriously in pursuit of something greater than ourselves. But if we succeed, the Etherian's skin pulsed with golden determination. If we succeed, we become proof that love knows no boundaries of species or form. Keeper Thane moved to the central table, placing what appeared to be an ancient crystalline device upon its surface. The artifact pulsed with inner light that seemed to respond to the cosmic energies building outside. This is a consciousness amplifier used in the earliest Veth-Hai ceremonies. If you are truly determined to attempt the joining, you will need it to channel the stellar energies during the ritual. Captain Cross stood slowly, her expression troubled but resolute. Zara, you're one of the finest officers I've ever served with. If this is truly what you both want, then you have my support. One by one, the other senior staff members nodded their agreement. Even some of the Etherian Council members displayed skin patterns that suggested grudging respect. If not approval, Elder Voss remained implacable. This is madness. The Council will never sanction such a violation of natural law. The Council, Keeper Thane said with ancient authority, will accept what I determine to be the will of the cosmos itself. And I sense that something greater than our small understanding is at work. Here, as the meeting dispersed and preparations began for the most dangerous ritual in Etherian history. Zara and Nith found themselves alone in the observation lounge. The binary stars now filled the viewport, their mutual destruction creating a light show that rivaled the birth of galaxies. "Are you afraid?" Zara asked. The sacred chamber aboard the Etherian flagship Velter had been prepared according to traditions older than recorded history. Crystalline formations from the Etherian homeworld created geometric patterns across the floor, their surfaces designed to focus and amplify consciousness during the most profound of rituals. Bioluminescent oils, harvested from deep-sea creatures on distant worlds, traced intricate symbols across the chamber's walls, symbols that pulsed in rhythm. With the cosmic catastrophe unfolding beyond the reinforced viewport, Zara stood at the chamber's threshold, her heart racing as she took in the alien beauty surrounding her. The dying binary stars filled the massive observation window, their final moments creating gravitational waves that made the very fabric of spacetime ripple like water, according to Keeper Thane. These distortions would allow consciousness itself to transcend normal physical limitations if the participants proved compatible. The stellar collapse reaches critical phase in 1 hour, Keeper Thane announced, its ancient voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in the crystalline structures around them. "Once you begin the Veth High, there can be no stopping. The cosmic forces involved will either complete the joining or tear your minds apart." Nith entered the chamber behind Zara, its skin displaying patterns of nervous energy mixed with unwavering determination. The Etherian had spent the past hours in meditation, preparing its consciousness for the most intimate sharing possible between sentient beings. Now it moved with ritual purpose, carrying containers of the sacred oils that would enhance their natural bioluminescence during the ceremony. "Are you ready for this?" Zara asked, though she could already sense Nith's emotional state through their growing connection. Fear, yes, but also a deep certainty that this was their destined path. "I have never been more ready for anything," Nith replied, beginning the ancient preparations. "Whatever we become it together." Keeper Thane had positioned itself near the consciousness amplifier, the crystalline device humming with energy that seemed to respond to the stellar radiation washing over the ship. Elder Voss and 2 other council members stood in silent observation, their skin patterns rigid with disapproval but bound by tradition to witness what might be the most significant Veth High in Etherian history. From the Harmony, Captain Cross and her senior staff watched through a live transmission link, their faces grave as they prepared to witness either a miracle or a tragedy. Marcus Webb documented everything with scientific precision, understanding that they were observing something that would change both species forever. The ritual oils painted warm patterns across Zara's skin as Nith applied them with reverent care. Each symbol carried meaning: unity, transcendence, the joining of separate streams into a single river. As the bioluminescent compounds absorbed into her human physiology, Zara felt her awareness expanding, her consciousness becoming more receptive to the Etherian mental frequencies. "The oils will help synchronize our neural patterns," Nith explained, its own skin now decorated with complementary designs. "During the joining, we must lower every barrier, share every memory, every emotion, every aspect of ourselves without reservation." The first gravitational wave from the stellar collapse hit the ship with enough force to make the deck shudder. The crystalline formations around them responded with increasing luminescence, as if the cosmic energies were awakening something deep within their molecular structure. "It begins," Keeper Thane announced. "Position yourselves at the chamber's center. The next wave will trigger the cascade that makes the Veth High possible." Zara and Nith moved to the ritual circle, their hands finding each other instinctively. The moment their fingers touched, both began to glow, not just the oils, but their very beings responding to each other's presence. The light that flowed between them pulsed in perfect synchronization, and even the watching Etherians could sense the profound compatibility of their consciousness. "Remember," Keeper Thane called over the building cosmic storm, "complete unity. Hold nothing back. Let your minds flow together like twin rivers joining the sea." The second gravitational wave struck with titanic force, and the crystalline formations erupted in brilliant radiance. The consciousness amplifier sang with harmonic frequencies that seemed to pierce directly into the Participants' minds, opening pathways that had never existed before. Zara gasped as Nith's consciousness crashed into hers like a warm tide. Suddenly she was experiencing 43 years of Etherean existence, childhood on a world where Aurora danced through crystalline cities, the profound loneliness of being unable to connect with her own species, the desperate hope that somewhere in the cosmos she might find understanding. Through their link, Nith experienced human complexity in all its passionate intensity. Zara's memories of Earth flooded through its consciousness, blue skies and rolling oceans. The fierce individual drive that characterized humanity, the capacity for love that transcended logic or reason. But the sharing went deeper than memory. Their very neural patterns began to merge, human creativity flowing into Etherean wisdom, while ancient empathic abilities awakened in Zara's transformed brain. She could suddenly perceive the emotional states of everyone in the chamber. Keeper Thane's profound satisfaction, Elder Voss's mixture of horror and fascination, Captain Cross's anxious hope transmitted through the communication link. "I can feel you," Zara whispered, though whether she spoke aloud or through their mental connection, she could no longer tell. "Not just your thoughts, but your essence. You're becoming part of me." "And you are becoming part of me," Nith replied, its voice harmonizing with hers in impossible ways. "I understand now why the ancient texts spoke of unity rather than mere bonding. We are not just connected. We are becoming one consciousness into forms." The third gravitational wave nearly overwhelmed the ship's stabilizers. The binary stars had reached the point of mutual contact, their outer layers merging in cascades of plasma that outshone entire galaxies. At that moment of cosmic unity, the Veth-High reached its crescendo. Light exploded from both participants as their separate identity streams flowed together into something unprecedented. Zara felt her consciousness expanding beyond anything she had imagined possible, while Nith experienced the fierce joy of complete understanding for the first time in its existence. The transformation went beyond mental joining. Their very biology began to adapt, neural pathways restructuring themselves to accommodate new forms of perception and communication. Zara's eyes took on subtle violet highlights that matched Nith's, while the Etherean's skin gained new depth and warmth that spoke of human passion integrated into its being. "Remarkable," Keeper Thane breathed, its ancient voice filled with wonder. "The resonance cascade is more complete than any joining in recorded history. You are no longer human and Etherean, you are something entirely new." Elder Voss stepped forward, its skin patterns cycling through colors that spoke of grudging amazement. "The compatibility index, it's unprecedented. How is such unity possible between species that evolved on different worlds through their merged consciousness?" Zara and Nith perceived the answer simultaneously. "Because consciousness itself has no boundaries," they replied in perfect unison, their voices creating harmonics that made the crystalline formations chime in response. "We were never truly separate species, we were facets of the same universal awareness, waiting to recognize each other." The stellar explosion reached its peak, bathing the chamber in light that seemed to come from beyond the visible spectrum. In that moment of cosmic rebirth, Estes stars became one spectacular nebula. The joined consciousness of Zara and Nith blazed with such intensity that everyone in the chamber felt its warmth. "The joining is complete," Keeper Thane announced, with profound satisfaction. "What has been created here cannot be undone by any force in the universe." As the immediate effects of the ritual began to settle, Zara and Nith found themselves still distinct individuals, but bound together by a connection deeper than anything either species had imagined possible. They could communicate through pure thought, share sensations and emotions across any distance, and access each other's knowledge and abilities as if they were extensions of themselves. "How do you feel?" Captain Cross asked through the communication link, her voice heavy with concern and wonder. Zara looked at Nith, and they both smiled with expressions that somehow seemed more complete than any they had worn as separate beings. "We feel," she began. "Whole," Nith finished. "For the first time in either of our lives. We feel complete." Elder Voss approached them cautiously, its skin displaying patterns of reluctant acceptance. "What you have achieved goes against everything our people believed possible. The Council will need time to understand the implications. Understanding will come." They replied together, their joined consciousness already perceiving ripples of change spreading through both species. This is only the beginning. Through the viewport, the nebula born from the stellar collision painted space in brilliant hues of creation and renewal. Where to stars had died, the raw materials for countless new worlds were spreading through the cosmos, a perfect metaphor for what had just occurred in the sacred chamber. You were right about the resonance cascade, Keeper Thane observed, studying readings from the consciousness AM. 6 months had passed since the Veth High, and the small colony ship New Harmony approached the world that would become humanity's first joint settlement with an alien species, the planet, designated haven by human cartographers and Silandra, by the Etherians, meaning place of new growth, hung like a blue-green jewel against the star field, its twin moons casting silver light across pristine oceans and untouched continents. Zara stood in the observation deck, her hand intertwined with Nith's as they watched their new home grow larger in the viewport. Their bond had only deepened in the months since the ritual, their shared consciousness now so seamlessly integrated that they often forgot where one ended and the other began. Around them, the remarkable changes their joining had triggered continued to manifest throughout both species. The empathic resonance readings are stabilizing, reported Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission's chief scientist and one of the first humans to experience the enhanced consciousness effects. Her own abilities had expanded dramatically after witnessing the Veth High, allowing her to perceive Etherian emotional states with remarkable clarity. We're seeing sustained compatibility indices between human and Etherian crew members that would have been impossible before your joining. Ambassador Quinn Rodriguez, a diplomatic veteran who had initially been skeptical of the entire enterprise, nodded thoughtfully as he reviewed the mission reports. The political implications are staggering. Both Earth and the Etherian Council have agreed to establish this colony as a test case for true interspecies cooperation. Your success here could reshape galactic relations for generations. Through the ship's corridors, the evidence of transformation was everywhere. Human and Etherian crew members worked side by side with an ease that amazed everyone involved. Nith's friend Kesra, a young Etherian engineer, had developed what could only be described as a romantic attachment to Lieutenant Sarah Chen, while the human linguist Marcus Webb found himself drawn to the Etherian poet Velthus in ways that transcended species boundaries. The resonance cascade you two created, observed Matriarch Senna, the ancient Etherian leader who had become the colony's spiritual guide, has awakened dormant neural pathways in both our peoples. We are witnessing the emergence of a truly integrated consciousness. Matriarch Senna had arrived on the colony ship as a representative of the Etherian Council, but Zara sensed through their bond that the elderly being had deeper motivations. Her skin patterns carried traces of ancient knowledge, and she moved with the careful purpose of one carrying significant secrets. As the ship entered heaven's atmosphere, Zara felt Nith's excitement flow through their connection like warm honey. Through their shared consciousness, she experienced the planet as an Etherian would, feeling the harmonic resonances of its crystalline formations, sensing the empathic echoes of its indigenous life forms, perceiving the subtle energy patterns that spoke of a world in perfect ecological balance. "It's beautiful," she whispered, though whether the observation came from her human aesthetic sense or Nith's Etherian perception, she could no longer distinguish. "It feels welcoming," Nith added, its skin displaying patterns of gold and green that spoke of deep contentment, as if the planet itself recognizes what we're trying to accomplish here. The landing site had been chosen for its symbolic significance, a valley where 3 rivers converged, representing the coming together of different streams into a single, more powerful flow. The human prefabricated structures integrated seamlessly with Etherian bioarchitectural elements, creating a settlement that seemed to grow organically from the landscape itself. As the colonists began the work of establishing their new home, the profound changes triggered by the Veth High continued to manifest in unexpected ways. The first surprise came when Marcus Webb and Velthus attempted their own joining ceremony, guided by techniques Zara and Nith had helped develop. "The consciousness resonance is different from ours," Zara observed, monitoring the bio readings as the two beings sat in meditative contact. "Less intense, but more musical. Each pairing creates its own harmonic signature, Nith agreed. Its empathic senses tracking the subtle changes in both participants. Marcus's analytical mind is harmonizing with Velthus' poetic consciousness. In fascinating ways, the joining succeeded, though with less dramatic effects than the original Veth. Marcus and Velthus emerged from the ritual changed, but still distinctly themselves, their bond allowing communication and shared sensation without the complete consciousness merger that Zara and Nith experienced. It's as if, Marcus explained later, we're learning to sing in harmony rather than becoming a single voice. Similar pairings began occurring throughout the colony with increasing frequency. Each joining was unique, creating its own pattern of consciousness interaction. Some were romantic, others platonic, but all contributed to an emerging collective awareness that seemed to encompass the entire settlement. The breakthrough came 3 months after planetfall, when little Ava Chen, Lieutenant Chen's 5-year-old daughter, approached, one of the young Etherian children without any of the traditional barriers that separated the species. The child, whose name translated roughly as Bright Stream, had been born with unusual neural flexibility even by Etherian standards. Look, Mama, Ava called excitedly as she and Bright Stream played together near the colony's central plaza. We can share dreams. Both children were glowing softly, their bioluminescence synchronized in patterns that made watching adults gasp in amazement. Through their innocent play, they had achieved a form of consciousness sharing that required no ritual, no preparation, no ancient technologies, just the natural openness of young minds, unconstrained by cultural expectations. The next generation, Matriarch Senna observed with deep satisfaction. They are being born already adapted to this new form of existence. Ambassador Quinn, who had been documenting every development for his reports to Earth, shook his head in wonder. We're not just establishing a colony. We're witnessing the birth of a new subspecies, beings who exist naturally in the space between human and Etherian consciousness. As the months passed, Haven developed its own unique culture that drew from both species while transcending the limitations of either. Human technological innovation merged with Etherian bioarchitectural techniques to create structures that seemed alive, responding to the emotions and needs of their inhabitants. Etherian empathic abilities combined with human analytical thinking to solve problems that neither species could have addressed alone. The agricultural systems they developed were particularly remarkable, creating crop varieties that seemed to communicate with their cultivators, adjusting their growth patterns based on the emotional resonance of the farmers. The art that emerged from the colony combined human visual creativity with Etherian synesthetic expression, producing works that could be experienced simultaneously through sight, sound, touch, and empathic connection. We're creating something unprecedented, Dr. Vasquez reported during one of their regular transmissions to Earth and the Etherian homeworld. A truly integrated society where the boundaries between species become meaningful only as complementary strengths rather than divisive differences. But perhaps the most significant development came when Zara and Nith announced that their bond had achieved something previously thought impossible. They were expecting a child. How is that even biologically feasible? Ambassador Quinn asked during the emergency medical consultation that followed the announcement. Dr. Vasquez, who had been studying the physiological changes occurring in bonded pairs, displayed her research findings on the colony's main screen. The Veth didn't just merge their consciousness, it fundamentally altered their biology. At the cellular level, their DNA has been rewritten isn't the right word. Enhanced, perhaps. Expanded to include compatibility sequences that bridge the gap between human and Etherian genetics. Matriarch Senna stepped forward, her ancient skin displaying patterns of profound satisfaction. This is why I came here, she admitted, her voice carrying harmonics of deep revelation. The eldest texts speak of the children of unity, beings who would be born from the joining of separate consciousness streams. Your child will be the first of a new people, equally human and Etherian, yet somehow more than either. Through their shared consciousness, Zara felt Nith's mixture of wonder and protective love as they contemplated bringing new life into existence. The child growing within her would be proof that love truly could transcend any boundary, creating Possibilities, but neither species had imagined. What will they be like? Zara asked, one hand resting on her still flat abdomen while the other maintained constant contact with Nith. Beautiful, Nith replied, its skin glowing with patterns of joy that had never existed in traditional Etherian displays. They will carry the best of both our people's human passion and creativity, Etherian wisdom and empathic connection. They will be living bridges between worlds. As the colony's first year drew to a close, delegations from both Earth and the Etherian Council arrived to witness what their people had accomplished. The humans came expecting a standard colonial settlement and found instead a thriving community that had transcended every assumption about interspecies relations. The Etherians, who had initially viewed the project with